This video shows how to create an Illuminate custom report, specifically combining assessment data with multiple Bridges assessments for completing the report card. So after logging in, click on Reports, then create a report. We're going to enter in a title. We're going to call this 2017-2018 Fall Report Card. And you can enter in a description here if you want. We're going to use units 1, 2, and 3 from the Bridges post assessments. So I'm just going to enter that in here to remind myself which test I use, and then you can add some tags in here if you want. Click continue. Now here's where it helps to have this cheat sheet here, the Illuminate Custom Report Detailed Quick Guide, or the report's cheat sheet. So like if I want student ID and student name, then I have to look in here under categories and under students demographics. If I want the teacher or to say that, you know, this is the current year, then I'm going to have to go in to class rosters. So what that looks like is, for that first one, students demographics, we have to enter it in exactly in order for us to be able to click this to find all the matching columns. So if I want student ID and I want the local student ID, I'll go ahead and select that for one of my columns. I also want student name, so I'm going to type that in, and whichever one you prefer, I like to use that one. And then if we want to put teacher name in, teachers/users. Now sometimes if you've entered data in a particular assessment before, you might see information from previous school years. So if you want to look at only your current roster, sometimes we'll have to add in rosters, current, teacher is current. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to put in here teachers/users, and then you have to delete this data too. So I'm going to click there, and then for teacher we want to put in username because that's what it said on the cheat sheet. Whatever format you prefer. Okay, and then we want to go back and see for teachers current, we have to go under class rosters. So class rosters, and again we have to delete that. And then for whether or not the teacher is current, we have to look for that down here. Teacher is current, so I'll go ahead and put that. So now we can add in all the assessments. So because I want to look at the data from units 1, 2, and 3 post-assessment, here in categories, that's where I'm going to find it. So the name of the assessment, post-assessment. Okay, so Unit 1 tested operations in algebraic thinking and number and operations in base 10. So I want to find the percent correct for each of those domains. So I'm going to go in here, and you can see that in the beginning there are specific standards. And if you scroll down, there's a lot of information here. But once you kind of look at it, you'll see that there's like a pattern to how this is presented. So I'm looking for, so here is, you can see this is Bridges Grade 3 Unit 1 Post-Assessment Number and Operations in Base 10, and this says whether or not it's mastered. I don't want that. I want percent correct. So here, this, when I click on this column, that is actually going to give me NBT percent correct. I also want operations in algebraic thinking. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit more to find operations in algebraic thinking percent correct. And so I'm going to add that in. And then I'm going to do the same for Unit 2. And Unit 2 only tested for operations and algebraic thinking, so that's the only one that I need to select from here. So I'm going to kind of scroll down past all the standards again until I see the operations and algebraic thinking domain, and here it is, percent correct. That's what I want, so I'm going to click that. And then I'm going to look at Unit 3 post-assessment. And Unit 3 tested OAT and NBT, just like Unit 1. So I am going to scroll past all the standards, look for number and operations in base 10% correct, put that in there, and then look for operations in algebraic thinking, percent correct, and put that in there. So when you scroll here, you're going to see all of your columns that you have selected, and I'm going to click Add Columns to Report. So now here's a list of all the columns you have in your report. So just in general, like if you wanted to hide a particular column, you can click here. Like for example, we might not want to see teacher is current, or my teacher name, and so we can hide that. Here, this is just all of the data that you selected. For format, you're most likely going to want to click round to whole number. I believe it defaults to 2 decimal places. Performance bands, I'm going to skip this for a little bit. I'll go back to it later on. Here is where you can reorder your columns if you'd like. And then if you decide like, oh, I don't want this information anymore, you can delete one of your columns. So when you click Save Changes and View Report, this is what it looks like so far. I usually prefer to have my percentages as whole numbers so we can go back and fix that. I also feel like I want to see operations and algebraic thinking all together and numbers and operations in base 10 all together, so we can go back to reorder that. So we'll just go to Manage Columns, and for each of the percent corrects, I'm going to put round to whole number so that it shows me that rounded to whole number. And then here you can see, here's number and operations in base 10, operations in algebraic thinking, operations in algebraic thinking, number and operations in base 10, operations in algebraic thinking. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to put numbers and operations in base 10 at the end. So I'm going to number that number 8, and then the other number and operations in base 10 from Unit 3 to be number 9. Okay, well, I got to put that one up. Okay, so Unit 1 OAT, Unit 2 OAT, Unit 3 OAT, and then I have NBT for Unit 1 and Unit 3. So I'm going to save that. And so here's what we have so far. So all of the percentages changed to whole numbers, and now we have OAT all together and NBT all together. So now what I want to do is I want to create a calculation to average these scores together, and then create a calculation to average the NBT scores. So I'm going to go into Advanced, click Add a Calculation, and it's helpful because on the side here it shows you what the columns are so that you can add in, and you can see here's OAT, OAT, OAT all together. So we're going to take E, F, and G and create a calculation with that. So I'm going to name this Overall Operations and Algebraic Thinking. And then our calculation is going to add up all of those and divide it by 3. And we'll save that. So like if we go to look at it, now we have that here. And then we can go back into Manage Columns and round this to a whole number, and then I'll show you what to do with the performance bands. But let's add in our other calculation. Oh, recess is over. Okay, so this one is going to be number and operations in base 10, and that is H and I. And so we're going to create that calculation and save, and then we should see that at the end. Okay, so we can go into manage columns, and now we can see that our new columns are here. I'm going to round to the whole number, and then here, this is where, like, if we want to see it on our 4-level scale below approaching proficient mastery, this is where we can change it in this performance band here. So I'm going to pick assessment 4-level scale for both of these. And then I do want to see it in a new column. So I'm going to click new column, and I do want it to be color coded, so I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to unclick one of the show labels just so that you see the difference in what that looks like. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So here is our calculations, and then here is where we clicked for that performance band to show up in a new column. And you can see here, this is where it said show label. It'll show strategic, intensive, meeting standard, or, you know, approaching standard. Or if we don't click show label, then it just shows you the percentage again. So however you want to look at it. But now, so what this score is it took these 3 percentages for operations and algebraic thinking, and it averaged them together. And then here it took the 2 from the number and operation scores and averaged them together. And so hopefully this helps you in filling out the report card. With this info, we can also create a form letter. Let me know if that's something you want to know how to do too.